Hello, hello. Okay, so I've got a question for you. Do you think that it's okay to ask for your needs to be met in a relationship? If you do, or even if you don't, how do you feel about asking for your needs to be met? Do you feel awkward about it? Do you have discomfort? Are you afraid to ask for your needs to be met? So, why am I asking about all of this? Well, really, it is important for your needs to be met when you're in a relationship with somebody, in a healthy relationship. But it's also important that the other person's needs are met. And sometimes our needs come into conflict. And sometimes I have so many conversations with people where they feel like it's not important for their needs to be met, or it feels awkward for them to focus on their own needs. And that just breaks my heart because that typically means that they come from or were taught in their they come from a family or they were taught in their life where their needs are not important. Somehow they're receiving that messaging or they received that messaging at some point in time. So I work with them to help them feel like their needs are important and to help them navigate ways to ask for their needs to be met. And that is what I want to talk to you about today, how to do that, what approach you can take. So I'm Dr. Kit Slies, life coach and a licensed psychologist, and I'm here to inspire perfectionists and anxious achievers to feel calm and confident while holding clear boundaries. And today I want to talk about how to get your needs met and a communication style called nonviolent communication. And I know people hear that name and they're like, violence, there's no violence involved in my communication. This isn't relevant to me. And that's, it probably is relevant. So if you haven't heard of nonviolent communication, the person who created it was a psychologist, Marshall Rosenberg, and he called it a language of compassion. And he described it in other ways as well. It is a set, it's a toolkit in many ways. In my brain, I think of it as like a mindset and just a way of being in this world. And there is a lot that goes into nonviolent communication. So I'm just going to give you an overview. Um, the I statements that I teach folks, and I'll link to a video below where I talk a little bit more in depth about how I teach I statements. But the I statements that I teach are really heavily influenced by nonviolent communication. Because the way I teach I statements, it takes into consideration the the four steps of nonviolent communication. So in nonviolent communication, there's a four-part process, and then there's two sides to that process. And the whole overarching idea with this process is how to be in tune with our needs, but also in tune with the other person's needs when we're having a dialogue or an interaction. And the way that we get in tune with that is through our feelings and observations that we make. Okay. So that is what brings us to the four-part process of nonviolent communication. One part of the process is observations. So these are observations that we might make about ourselves or about another person. And the key to this is to make these observations without judgment. So how we might use this is when we're having a conversation with somebody who's important to us and we feel like that they are not listening to us. If we're going to name that in a conversation, the judgment would be, hey, you're not listening to me. When in reality, we don't really know if they're listening. So let's say they're on their phone scrolling while we're trying to have an important conversation with them, and we're getting really frustrated with that, right? So we might see that and feel frustration and then think, oh my gosh, they're not listening. But that thought is our interpretation of the situation. Now, in all likelihood, maybe they're not listening. But if we say, hey, you never listened to me, what happens is, well, how would you feel if someone said that to you? Hey, you're not listening. You never listened to me. One way of responding to that is to feel defensive and to start defending yourself. Me? What are you talking about? No, I'm listening. Right? Or we might really overly identify with that, like, oh my gosh, you're right. I never listen. I'm a horrible person. Both of those ways of thinking don't allow us to engage in the conversation in a productive way. So if we were to present that with an observation, the observation is, hey, I am seeing that you are on your phone while I'm talking to you. Okay. So that's an observation. It's not based in judgment. It's factual. It's like if you were a scientist and you had to record your observations of an experiment, how would you do that? Or if you had to tell a story about that is just factual, that somebody could recreate it in their mind. Now, the second part of this process is the feeling. So what is the feeling that you feel when you observe that thing? That observation doesn't cause the feeling, but our thoughts about the observation cause the feeling, okay? So the feeling might be frustration, anger, sadness, loneliness, fear. Okay, there's lots of feelings. Use your feelings wheel. You can Google that one. There's lots of good feelings wheels out there if you're not good at the feelings language. Okay. So the other part then is the needs. This is one of the other parts in the nonviolent communication 4-part process, is what is the need that you can identify in that moment that maybe isn't being met. The need in the example that we're working with here is that you have a need to be heard. You want your partner to hear you. The last part is to make that request. And this is where people who get hung up on, is it okay to make requests? This is where we also want to be careful with our language, because there is a difference between requests and demands. A request, hey, I would really appreciate if you could listen to me right now, is very different than you had better listen to me. I don't care what you're looking at on your phone, put it down, listen to me. That is a demand that does not feel good, does it? And so that is how, when I teach I statements, I incorporate all those, because the framework of the I statements I teach is I feel blank when I observe blank because blank. And that blank is because the observation makes me think this, and that's what leads to my feeling. And so therefore my request is blank. So in our example, I'm feeling frustrated and rejected or lonely when I observe you being on your phone when I'm talking to you, because it makes me think that you're not listening and that you don't care about me. And, I realize that maybe that's not true, but I'm telling you how I'm feeling. And so my request is I would just really appreciate it, and I would feel so much better if you could put your phone down while I'm talking to you. Now, nonviolent communication, there's these 4 parts of the process, but there's 2 sides of it, which is also taking into consideration the other person's feelings and needs. So in that example of the I statement that I just said, I might even expound on that further using that 4-part process by saying, hey, is there a need that you're having that's not being met? Like, what's got you on your phone right now? Are you able to listen to me right now? Maybe you need to kind of have this downtime or transition or do what you're doing on your phone before you can give me your full attention. So I might even explicitly say that in my communication, or I might even just be thinking that, so that as I'm speaking, my whole tone and demeanor is softening. Because if I'm thinking, oh my gosh, maybe my partner has had a real rough day and they're not in a space to be able to hear all the things that I want to go through all the events of the week and plan out the week and maybe make some requests about the house, about things I need them to step up on the house and da da da, and they're just not in the headspace to think about that right now. I'm gonna like if my if the thing that I want to talk about to them isn't that urgent that it can wait, I'm going to take into consideration my partner's needs at that moment. Also, hey, are you okay? What's going on with you? My needs are still important. I still need to be heard and I need to talk. But also, let's find a creative solution here, a creative strategy to meet both of our needs. Because after all, that is what nonviolent communication is all about, is essentially finding strategies to meet everybody's needs, to meet both parties' needs, so that we can engage at a compassionate and human level, so that we are both listening and receiving to each other and expressing our needs fully, and therefore not going into a place of defensiveness, not going into a place of blame on the other person or criticizing them. That's what nonviolent communication is about. And so this is a very broad overview of it today. It can take a lot of time and practice to really embody it. But these broad strokes that I think are just helpful to kind of plant those seeds and set the stage for you, strokes of compassion, of acknowledging your own feelings, of allowing yourself to name your feelings and explore, why am I feeling this way? What need of mine isn't being met in this moment? And what's going on with this person that I'm engaging with? That can take a lot of work and awareness, particularly if you are feeling activated emotionally in that moment, excuse me. So nonviolent communication takes practice. It takes a level of emotional awareness of yourself. It can take a lot of work. It can take some work in therapy, or just doing your work to really be able to show up presently in that way. But that's why, nonviolent communication is such a beautiful thing, because it really, being able to communicate at that level really is a pinnacle of being aware of yourself, being tuned in with other people, and everything that is involved, that might take, learning how to use coping skills and skills to gain emotional awareness and coping for those emotions that are coming up. There can be a lot of foundational work to get to that level, but nonviolent communication, here's another way to think of it. It's aspirational. And I will say, even though I've been studying it for a while and I do try to live it, I am so not perfect with my nonviolent communication. I'm sure you could ask probably my husband. There are times when I am coming at communication in not the most compassionate way, because I'm feeling activated and I'm not being totally present, and so I'm just coming at him with jabs maybe sometimes, right? But I'm always coming back to the nonviolent communication whenever I'm aware of it, whenever I can. So it's aspirational, and it is a ever evolving process. So I hope that you found this introduction to nonviolent communication helpful today. And as you think about it, so I'll end with this, because we started talking about, is it okay to ask for our needs to be met? And so the reason why I'm framing it under nonviolent communication is because if you're using that nonviolent communication stance, then the other person has the opportunity to say, I'm actually not in a place to be able to meet your needs right now. Or, yeah, let's talk about your needs and we'll have to meet them another time. But you are not creating this dynamic where you're demanding, right? And so, therefore, yes, it is okay to ask for your needs to be met in that regard. And a person who is in a psychologically healthy place should be able to receive that request from you and have a dialogue about your needs. If you are still feeling uncomfortable with feeling like your needs are important or worthy, or that it's okay to get your needs met, then it might be time for you to reach out for some therapy, or looking into nonviolent communication just a little bit further to do some experimentation with it for yourself, acknowledging you might feel totally awkward to try it on for size. That's okay. But you might feel more and more comfortable with asking for your needs to be met over time the more you play around with it. If you're in the state of South Carolina or Oregon and are interested in working with me on something like this, I will put a link below to my website where you can contact me. And I hope you found this helpful. Until next time, be well, be calm and confident, and set clear boundaries for yourself. Bye.